what was beautiful about the environment that I was working in is that the past business review, so the whole PPI and trying to make the business better was occupied by a lot of older people that had done the job before, had retired. I was always easily the youngest in my role by at least 20 to 30 years. Right. So I'm working with a lot of older people, and what that meant is the first thing that I identified was, because these individuals had already done what they needed to in their career, I wasn't a threat to them.
Okay.
So there was a lot more opportunity for me to learn from them. A lot of them took me under their wings. They used to joke and say, we don't wear ties, but there's no way you can come to work and not wear a tie. You haven't earned your stripes yet. And it was that kind of banter and that kind of environment. But they genuinely, literally would take me under their wing and be like, these are the things we've done in the past. This is how you should comport yourself in the business world. And I found it really instrumental, looking back now, how the access to such individuals kind of broadened my knowledge horizon and mindset around the business environment.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Against All Odds. My name is Daniel Coker, your regular host, and this week we are privileged to have one of my new friends, Mr. Ade Ahmadu. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah. Well, it depends where you're from. Yeah.
Are you a South Londoner or?
Born in South London.
Okay.
Live in Kent now.
Kent. Okay.
But if you go to any Arabic country, it's Ahmadu.
Ahmadu.
Yeah, so it depends.
Okay.
Ahmadu in school, whatever, it's fun.
Right, okay. So Ade is a coach and a career coach, and he's also a professional. He'll tell us a bit more about his background. He has had many years of experience working with a lot of blue chip companies, which he's going to tell us about shortly. And I won't spoil the show by giving you too much information. But Ade, you're welcome to Against All Odds.
Thank you, Dad.
Fantastic. So we normally start these conversations with asking our guests about their past, just to give us a bit of context. So would you mind sharing with us just a snippet about your past?
Before this episode starts, I'd like to ask a big favor. Your subscription means a lot to us, because the bigger this platform gets, the bigger the guests get. So do me a favor, please click on the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. Now let's get back to this episode.
Yeah, no, that's not a problem at all. So as we said before, born in south of London, if you can call Guy's Hospital south, but yeah.
Okay.
But pretty much most of my formative years were in southeast. So I went to primary school, went to secondary school there. Then in about what I would call year 10, about 14, 15, moved to Kent at a time where actually there was only a few black people in Kent. But I was still making the commute from Kent to school. My school was in South East London, Forest Hill, so I would pass about 4 or 5 boroughs to get to school. And I say that because when growing up, that could be quite a key aspect as to whether you stay alive or not. But I managed to navigate that, and so went to uni in Southwest London or Surrey, depending on how you view it. And based on that, was able to start working part-time. So it's quite interesting. I worked part-time in a retail bank in my 3rd year of uni. And as a result of that, when I finished my first degree, I went full-time for about a year. And that's what started my journey in the what they call financial services sector. So as of the time when I was working in retail banking, PPI was becoming a big thing. So lots of people were making claims. There were lots of what they call claims management companies, which are CMCs, that would were raising up and sort of asking people, have you ever had a PPI before? And I remember, I specifically remember I would have to travel from Kent, Gravesend specifically, to work, and I worked in Peckham. So I was going from zone, not a number, no number, zone A, B or C or something like that, to Peckham. Really interesting story actually about how I even got that role. So I remember when I applied, initially I was supposed to start in Bromley, and then I got my offer letter and it said you're starting in Peckham. So I was like, and so for someone who's grown up in the Lewisham area, if anyone's aware of like the sort of postcode wars, I was like, yeah, I'm not sure that Peckham's going to happen. But they were like, no, that's the branch you were supposed to work in. So and I say this because I remember the first day I went, and as you obviously work in a retail bank, had uniform or work uniform, which was corporate, which is a suit. And I remember walking, and I took the first step out, and it was almost like I was invisible.
Okay.
Because I was wearing a suit. Okay. And so I started to understand the power of the corporate world and the corporate dress, and I'd literally walk down the high street and no one would bat an eyelid. And I was like, oh wow, okay. So, but anyway, as it were, I moved into my first sort of contract role. I was on like 17k plus an extra 1k London waiting, and I remember a few of my friends who had sort of also graduated at the same time and kind of got graduate roles. And so I think at that time, this is 2010 maybe, 2009, graduate roles are paying around 30k. So I was like, oh my days, like, they want almost double what I'm on, like, what am I doing with my life? But as it were, first contract role came, and I remember one of my friends, she was like, she was working in Santander in Milton Keynes, and so she was like, Ade, like, I get like £140 a day. Uh-huh. And I was like, whoa, like £140 a day, like, what is going on? And she sort of navigated and helped me navigate how to get into contracting. I remember I got my first contract role, and it was through a company called Deloitte, and that started off my contracting sort of, or some people call it contingent staff journey. And so based on that, I went into contract, did that for a couple of months, and then joined a company called the Financial Ombudsman Service, or otherwise known as FOS, if anyone works in finance. And I did a good number of years there, and that's what kind of opened my eyes. But I realized very early on that the PPI stuff will start drying up soon, so I wanted to pivot very quickly. So I remember in 2011, I did my Prince 2 myself, so I spent 2 weekends. I did the foundation in 1 weekend.
So for the sake of our viewers who are not familiar with this, the Prince 2 is a project management.
That's it. Yeah. Sorry about it. I'll just take it for granted. So I did a project management course in the hope that once I did it, I thought, that's it. Get the project management certificate, doors are gonna open, game over, like project manager. No. But as it were, I did it in 2 weekends, and a lot of people like sat on the fence with like taking like months and months to do it. I did the first weekend, I remember it was December, done the foundation, did the second weekend, and then I remember like one of the people I was on a course with called me and said, Ade, like, did you get your grades? And I was just like, no, I haven't got it yet. He was like, I failed. I was like, man. Because you have to do it again, and it was like in my mind, the Prince 2 exam wasn't a logical exam. You couldn't like just rock up and use logic to do it. You had to study the answers because they were not necessarily logical. I remember finding out that I got 51%. I was like, woo! I do not have to do this again. No one asks you what grade you get. It's have you got your Prince 2 or not? Yeah. So I think that kind of started my journey on the business transformation roles that I started to get. I thought, I'm going to get a project management role, just put the Prince 2 on the CV, bam! The doors are going to open. No. And so what I had to do was sort of, in the jobs that I had within the financial services, initially from FOS onwards, I had to pivot into a business analyst role, or just helping on business analyst projects, and using the information and learning on the job to understand about business change. And so unlike a doctor or an accountant, and I'm not even saying like it's quite cutthroat, but if someone says they're a doctor, you have an idea of what they do. If someone says they're you know, a mechanical engineer or an accountant, you have an idea. But when I was starting, if you said you're a business analyst, there was a spectrum and a number of things that you could be doing in a business analyst role. And so, you know, I did everything that I could to try and learn about what being a business analyst was. And through the various jobs that I did in financial services, apply myself. What was beautiful about the environment that I was working in is that the past business review, so, you know, the whole PPI and trying to make the business better was occupied by a lot of older people that had done the job before, had retired, but maybe had just wanted to do some extra work, so they came back contracted to help the business. So I was always easily the youngest in my role by at least 20 to 30 years. Right. So I'm working with a lot of older people, and what that meant is the first thing that I identified was, because these individuals had already done what they needed to in their career, I wasn't a threat to them.
Okay.
So there was a lot more opportunity for me to learn from them. A lot of them took me under their wings. They used to joke and say, you know, we don't wear ties, but there's no way you can come to work and not wear a tie. You haven't earned your stripes yet. You know, and it was that kind of banter and that kind of environment. But they genuinely, literally would take me under their wing and be like, these are the things we've done in the past. This is how you should comport yourself in the business world. And I found it really instrumental, looking back now, how the access to such individuals kind of broadened my knowledge horizon and mindset around the business environment. You know, just simple things like how you send emails, how you respond. You know, like if you get an email, don't respond straight away. Give it a day. These are soft skills that you don't necessarily get taught. And not to say that, you know, the graduate environment is a disadvantage, but if you're working with all your counterparts, or I imagine if I was working with all my counterparts, all my friends at my age, I wouldn't have had access to that knowledge, and I would more have been working in a competitive environment that would cause a different set of anxiety, and I didn't necessarily experience that. So I find it a privilege being able to work with older individuals, and which I did for quite a long time of my career.
So what are you doing currently?
So
apart from
so currently now, or where it took me to is basically business transformation. And as a result of that, I've worked with a lot of organizations as part of being a contingent staff. The last assignment I was on was working with a tech company, it's called Meta, as a senior legal project manager, which is fantastic because I've been able to change industries. So I went from financial services, then walked into pharmaceutical with GSK for 4 years, and then sort of done a couple of years in tech, which is a completely different environment, different sector, but it's kind of given me a competitive edge around that. And that's the professional journey. Obviously there's an educational piece which we can get into after, but that's just a background of sort of my professional journey till date.
Fantastic. So you talk about project management, and the idea I get about project management people is that you've got to be logical. You've got to be somebody who thinks in terms of steps and procedures, and you've got to be able to see things and break them down into logical reasoning. Would you say that this is something that came to you naturally? Did you sort of fall into it, by chance, or was it a deliberate or an intentional effort? Because some people are not logical. You know, some people are very good in what they do, but they're not necessarily logical.
Yeah, no, great question. I had to learn how to be logical within a business environment. But why and how my career transitioned into sort of like business change and transformation is because I was really good at sort of challenging status quos. So that's what I really enjoyed most. So, you know, the logic part, being able to obviously run a project and deliver, which is one of my, you know, I always love to deliver on things, even where they think it can't be. But the inquisitive mind to challenge status quos is what kind of led me into business transformation and change. And more specifically, the latter part of my career, the strategic part was something I was more interested in. How do we take learnings from past business or business cases? How do we set up an organization strategically so that we can achieve the objectives as an organisation, department, or team, and it's that sort of inquisitive nature in me that kind of moved into that direction. And I think the element of being able to run programs is something that I've learned. So, I don't take for granted the soft skills I have. I play musical instruments and sort of choir director and quote unquote. And so coordinating different parts at the same time to bring harmony is something that, I definitely thrive in. And you need that kind of skill set and to have that visionary skill in order to kind of run those strategic programs. So that's where my career has taken me to. I've sort of lent into my core skills, but also tried to develop them more. And I think that's why in 2021 I started to, I commenced my executive MBA, because I just wanted to equip myself with tools, surround myself with people that can help to, enhance and chisel the skills within me.
Okay, fantastic. You done with your executive MBA now?
Done.
Relief.
Done, yeah. 2 years. So I think the minimum term is 2 years. And my wife charged me to say, you're finishing in 2 years. And so, yeah, here I am. Definitely one of the toughest things I've done, because I wouldn't necessarily say I'm your typical academia in the kind of individual, but happy it's done.
Okay. Right, you're a tall, big black man, and I'm asking this question because I'm going to be talking about, I want you to talk about stereotypes. Okay, and I also happen to know that you featured as number 1 in the 56 Black Men. This was something that Cephas did. Cephas Williams, for those of you who are not aware, I don't know what he's actually. I don't know.
He's a great guy.
He's a great guy, yeah. But Cephas came up with this project of profiling 56 different black people who were wearing hoodies, and you were number 1.
Yeah.
So tell us about that experience, and tell us about what your experience has been from a stereotypical perspective.
Yeah, no, thank you for signposting that. So, featured because I believed in what the message is, and the core message was around distilling and demystifying stereotypes, heuristics, which are basically shortcuts to how we think of people. You see someone in a hoodie, black guy, you might think, criminal. Sorry, I mean, that's the atypical stereotype. So that was to sort of demystify that and say the people that you look at are actually a lot more. There were MPs and various great individuals in that space. But so my experience has been working in the corporate world, especially as I start to get higher and I've experienced promotions, is that you see less of you around. And so if not for the fact that I had individuals that weren't like me who could give me perspective as to how some of my actions might be perceived, I would never have really fully understood the stereotypes that exist in the workplace. And I say this because it's important to understand the landscape you work in first. Understand the systems that are around. And what am I saying in basic English? Just understand the rules of the game. That's the basic fundamentals. And I started to understand the rules of the game in the environments that I worked in. And I understood that those rules are not set up for people like me. Not intentionally, but just naturally. If the larger majority are a particular type of demographic, then the rules of the game are probably going to be set up to favour them, number one. I think more importantly, through my research and through my understanding from the studies I've done, it goes deeper than just systemic infrastructure. It boils down to culture. And so, naturally, if I see yourself somewhere, or I see someone who looks like me, I might go up to them and we can probably greet each other with some sort of level of commonality and say, hey, how's it going, my bro? And we would feel at home with each other. I couldn't do that to someone from a different demographic and say, hey, what's going on, my bro? Whereas, if there's large numbers of a certain type of demographic in a specific working environment, I might feel a little bit out of place. There's no belonging. And so naturally what happens is that because of the culture of an environment that we're in, I don't necessarily have from day one all the attributes and skills to thrive naturally. So I might be good at my job, raw, good at my job, hard working, keep my head down, but not have any knowledge of how to network in that environment.
Social skills, yeah.
I might not have any knowledge of what the criteria is to get promoted. That I definitely don't have a mentor. I didn't even know what a sponsor was. And so when you think about all of these attributes that aren't necessarily, I grew up in a background where I'm first generation British here because my parents are from Nigeria. We're not necessarily taught that. So culturally in Nigeria, you might not, don't look in the eyes of the person who's speaking to you. If I'm talking to you, do you understand? And that's counterproductive to the culture in the workplace, where it's look at someone in the eyes, firm handshake. It builds the profile of who you are. And so experiencing that really started to shape the passions that I discovered in 2020 around actually what things can be put in place to level the playing field for people from different diverse backgrounds, who have a different mindset and a diverse train of thought that can add value to an organization. And so normally I would find myself in meetings and tone myself down. I would, if I tried to challenge, be told that I was quite aggressive.
Okay.
I'd constantly be told, "Oh, you're a big black guy," and
that's the point I was trying to get to.
You're a bit scary, ain't you? And it's like you start to hear that quite often, and you start to understand that people are now verbalizing their stereotypes and heuristics. And as much work as I did do, which sometimes is above and beyond my counterparts, I just found when I looked up, there wasn't anyone that looked like me. And I didn't necessarily have an answer at that time, which was interesting. But naively, I thought, oh, do you know what? There must be a way to break through this. But in answer to your question, because obviously I know that's a long-winded answer, but there are stereotypes in the workplace. Campaigns like the one I joined helped to bring the topic to the surface, but there's a lot more that needs to be done to start building equity in the workplace for people that look like myself. And that's some of the work that I'm passionate about doing or getting involved in, and that's why I've started doing the requisite research and putting things in place to understand what that change looks like.
Actually, just before we started this shoot, we had a conversation off camera, and I was telling you about an experience I had yesterday where I went to buy fuel. And it was 11:30 at night, and the place is all locked up and everything, a self-service place. And the guy beckons to me and says, you've got to pay first. So I go and pay. And then somebody comes after me, a lady who's not like me, right? And she's allowed to fuel her car first before paying. And I was with my daughter. I said, no, this is not right. I've got to, this is not right. This is just clear profiling.
Yeah.
So you see a tall black man, he's got to be dodgy, he's probably going to be trying to fuel and run away. And you see somebody who's not like that person, that person's less likely. And these are some of the things that we have to overcome, I guess.
Yeah, when you told me that story, I was angry actually, because that took me back, I think 5 or 10 years, and maybe I don't fill up my car in the night, I don't know, but I haven't experienced that. But in my mind, these experiences do one of two things, right? And I think mostly more people will pander to one. It will cause us as individuals, and I say individuals, I say as a black man, it will cause me to shy away from that environment and that situation. So, you know, I'll go back to the workplace. If I continue experiencing blockages and just encounters that are counterproductive to the progression of my career, I'm more than likely going to want to leave that organization first. So fight or flight. More time will be flight for you know, sanity and just well-being. But if I experience it enough, it's like, actually, do I want to be in this environment? And that's sometimes what happens to us as black men. We want to go and do our own thing. Mm-hmm. The second aspect is fight. How much fight do you have in you, and who are you fighting against? And so you know, statistically, and I always talk about this with a few people, and I say it so that we can just understand the landscape that we're in. Now, in the UK, as you would know, we're probably about 3 or 4% as black people. Right, you know, obviously I grew up in London, so that can be a little bit skewed, and it's about 13 to 14%. But still, with that being the case, and I always say this, and I'm not inciting violence, a disclaimer, and I'm sure nor do you, but you know, okay, let's call it this. If we had like a sports event and we had 81% of, you know, the cohort, which are the percentages white, don't quote me on that, but I think it's around that, and you had 3% or 3 people coming to play that against 81, the odds are stacked up against us. So from that point of view, it's like, actually, is there a point even playing the game? Let's forfeit it. And sometimes that's what it feels like in the corporate world. But actually, I'm very much of the opinion, this is my opinion, by the way, and I very much will home it into me, is that we can protest, which is great, because we're tight. But actually, more importantly, we need to get to the place where we can change policy by exemplifying excellence. So we need to exemplify excellence first. We need to get buy-in. We definitely need to surround ourselves with allies that are serious about making change. And once we get to positions of power through exemplifying excellence, we can change policy that has a more long-lasting impact and effect than maybe just protesting by itself. And that's one of my core missions in life, to, number one, exemplify excellence, because I believe there's 2 facets to that. The first one is exemplify excellence, actually challenge the status quo of what a black man like me can produce. But the second aspect of that is, if I can exemplify excellence, then I can make that journey relative to other black men who are younger than me, actually map out that journey. They might see what I've done as a milestone, and they might see it as, oh, he done that. But actually, if I can break it down and make it relative and say, right, these are the ways I've done it, these are the struggles I've gone through, and actually real struggles, I'm not the academia kind of person, or I'm not this or that, it starts to help build a pipeline of other excellent individuals. And what we can start to see is the value that we bring to organizations or environments. I think that's really important. And I think that's the one way, I'm not saying it's not the only way, it's the one way we can start to make change in society for people like myself. Because I'm really, it's upsetting. I get angry at these kind of situations that we find ourselves in. But the best way to do that is to keep driving forward with the passion and drive to make real sustainable change.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that you say that, and one of the things as well that you do, as you've alluded to just earlier, was the fact that you're involved in career coaching.
Yes.
So, and one of the reasons why we started this podcast was to profile people like yourselves who have succeeded against the odds that you just spoke about, because there's just not enough of us, you know, to move the needle, and it's always this never-ending battle of, you've got to justify yourself, you've got to work 10 times as hard. You know, people look at you and think that you're lazy, you're incapable of rising up to certain heights and all that. It's a struggle, you know, and for us, or at least for me, the reason why I came up with this podcast was to show people that it's possible, you know, if the mindset is right, and if you do certain things, and you've kind of spoken about excellence, you know, people must be intentional about excellence. Because what I tend to find is, in our community, some people have this mentality of just doing the bare minimum to just get by, because I'm not liked anyway, I'm not going to be promoted anyway, nothing good is going to come out of, in this job for me or this career for me. So, I'm not earning enough, so let me, try and do the least that I have to do to get away with, But the people that I've interviewed, like yourselves, who have risen up above that, have this mindset of, if you're doing something, do it properly.
Yeah.
Do it properly, do it the best of your ability. I mean, the Bible talks about it. Whatever your hand finds to do it to the best of your ability. What can you say to our viewers about the importance of being intentional about excellence?
Oh, it's a great segue. So I think I can only kind of speak on my truth, and it's important for people to understand where I've come from. So I think in school I only got 7 GCSEs.
Okay.
I only got 7 GCSEs because I spent 3 months in year 10 or year 11 in hospital. So I managed to salvage 7 GCSEs. That's great. It's not great. Whatever. But to me it was like, I remember my mum was like, thank God you got some. We got the core ones. Went to college first year, and I will come back to your point. Went to college first year, did media, design, technology and physics, because for some reason in my head I kind of got brainwashed to thinking I should be an architect.
Okay.
Hated maths, hated design, technology, loved media, and I'm a musical person. I taught myself how to play drums, bass, piano, so I should have been nurturing those skills from that time. So school is from September to about July. So in December I knew I hate physics, hate maths, I'm gonna drop out. I'd done some research. I realised that there was a college in Alberton that allows you to do your AS and A2. So AS is like the first year of A levels, A2 is the second year, so it allows you to do both in 1 year. So I was like, cool. If I get my grades, doesn't matter. If I don't, whatever, I'm gonna go to this college and do the intense. They call it intense course. Now, whilst I might not have been academically astute all the times, I definitely have always been a hard worker.
Okay.
Sometimes probably to my own detriment. So went to this Alberton college, did business studies, AS, A2. I remember I started A2, I'm learning about things that I haven't even studied in AS first. But whatever it is, I was doing college 9 to 5 every day, but I managed to get my grades, went to uni with all the people that were going at my age group. That was my, that was my criteria. Let me go to uni with the people in the same year so that I can avert the shame of dropping out. Anyway, as it were, I navigated all of that without intention.
Okay.
So hard work, but without necessarily knowing what I wanted to do. Again, came to uni, for some reason, got brainwashed to thinking, okay, you can be an accountant. Did accountancy for first year, hated it. Dropped out. You can see the pattern here, right? Dropped out, but the way student loan and uni worked in those days is that if you manage to stay in uni, you can continue getting your student loan. So some people had clocked the system. They'll get to second year, drop out. So some people were in uni for like 8 years. I don't know. But anyway, I just said, okay, cool. So I ended up doing media and business. Once again, loved the media element of it. Was able to kind of get through, but without too much effort. Got a 2-1. I was 3 months off of first, and I was like, probably should have just exerted a little bit more effort, but it was what it was. Once again, no intention. Was working in a bank. Then I said, I'm just going to go full time. All of this without intention. It's to come back to your question, and a lot of that was kind of scavenging through, right? Kind of just doing enough to get by. And it wasn't until I started obviously engaging with individuals who are 20, 30 years older than me, who were teaching me life lessons, that I understood what intention was. So I was a hard worker, but didn't have intention.
Okay.
And so the problem is that with that, and this is what I tell a lot of people, especially some people I mentor, I was working against people who had absolute intention and knew where they wanted to be. So what's happening is I was going for interviews or jobs, and you could tell this guy not really sure what he wants to do. And then it wasn't until one interview, and this is the power of intention. I went for a business analyst role, and I remember it as clear as and as vividly as yesterday. The interviewee said to me, "What do you want to do?" I said, I'd like to progress from being a business analyst to a project manager. And I didn't know he had noted that. 3 months into my job, he saw that I was underutilized, is what the words he said to me. So he went to the managing director on my behalf in sponsorship and said, "We need to promote this guy into a project management role." And that's the first time I understood what intention was and how that triggers sponsors.
Opens doors, doesn't it?
Completely. Yeah. He came and offered the job to me on my desk without me applying, without the job being offered to anyone else. And I went straight into the role. And that's the first time I understood what intention was. Now, still on the show, still like not fully conscious of the power of intention, but it wasn't until I would say 2019, 2020, I went on what I call pursuit of purpose. So I was like, there must be more to life than just going to work and earning day to day. And I read a book which I love, was called Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren.
Yeah.
Read that book. Then I discovered a Japanese term called Ikigai, which talks about, it's a Venn diagram that basically has an intersect. So Ikigai means your reason for being, and it's about your passion, things you love, your profession, things that you're good at, your vocation, what you can get paid for, and your mission, what the world needs. And so the intersect between all of that is called your reason for being. It really was like a light bulb moment for me. And so I said, okay, what do I need to do? So I was searching for all these things, and I was looking for a side hustle at the time. And I remember as clear as day, I heard a big voice said, "Use what I've given to you in your hands." And I was like, wow, okay. I was like, what is that? And then I realized for a number of years, I'd been helping people with their CVs. I'd been helping people with job interviews. I worked in a lot of jobs that would be doing mass hiring. So I'll do the beacon call. I'll say, "Hey guys, let's get this job. Let's go." I'll help them with their CV, fix them up to the point where most people would come in after me would get paid higher. But as long as they came in, I was happy. And then I went to do a CV course. I paid £200 to get my CV reviewed. But I was going there to see how he done it.
Okay. To learn from it.
Took his method, was giving it to people for free.
Oh, okay.
Then the next step was I went to go get executive coaching, which I didn't know existed before. But when I found out about it, I was like, wow, okay, let me do it. And then automatically I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. Like, I don't know what this person's doing, but it's just amazing because they're extracting for me like what my purpose and passion in life is and what I want to do. And so when it came to 2019, 2020, when it says use what I've given you in your hands, it was absolutely clear to me. I didn't have to think about what was in my hand. I knew that my purpose and mission in life was to help others fulfill their full potential, but more specifically, help people within their careers rise up to their full potential, right? And so that's how intention started to bring clarity to my role in life. And the vast contrast in that is that I'm able to walk through any brick wall knowing the mission that I have. See, people don't get frustrated because of hard work. They get frustrated because of hard work towards no end. And if people had a mission, no matter what it was, and they're able to fulfill that with the gifts that they have, the natural abilities that they have, what you'll find is more people being intentional about the job opportunities they take, about the places that they want to work, about the people that they engage with, about the networking events that they go to, because they know that this is directly going to help with my North Star. And I think that's the power of intention, I don't know what you're going to call this one, but maybe we call it power of intention.
That's actually a good one, actually. Anyway, so how does we're just wrapping up shortly anyway, but how does a first generation Nigerian with a very strongly Northern Nigerian name end up being a religious person as well, a Christian?
Yeah, no, very interesting question. So I think that comes primarily from my mum and my dad. So yeah, my grandfather on my dad's side was a Muslim, but
okay.
when my mum and my dad came together, I guess the faith that they decided to go with was Christian. But I think more specifically, when I was growing up, the way that the UK was set up was, if my dad was working, more time I would have to be with my mum. So if my mum's going to church, I'm going to church. But I think I decided to take up the faith myself after research and after a lot of evidence that I've seen about God's existence. And whilst I know a lot of people might battle with that, that's the path that I've decided to go along with and choose, and it informs a lot of my actions. I am not a saint. I will not pretend to, or I was, I've done many things in life that, don't kind of glorify the faith or the God that I serve, but that's the power of grace, the fact that you don't have to be perfect, but I'm trying every day now to make sure that I fulfill my gift. And that's one of my biggest drivers behind purpose. Mm-hmm. I believe that, and this is my true belief, I always say, a fork finds no purpose in itself until it is used to feed other people and nourish them. So I see that as the greatest analogy for human beings, that everything we have in ourselves is great, but is not necessarily for us. It's for the people in our communities. It could be your immediate family, where you work. And so I always try to serve the community that I'm in. But that comes from a fundamental basis of my faith as well, which talks about being able to serve others. Jesus said, if you feed the hungry, you clothe the homeless, you're doing that for him. But I see that as the basis of everything I do, and I also believe that empathy, which comes from curiosity, is the bedrock for service and everything that we do. And if you everything I try to do with my jobs till the last day I leave is to serve, to make sure that I'm doing the best I can as well.
What do you think of this podcast and what we're trying to do as we wrap up?
Do you know what? Against All Odds is powerful because what you're doing is bringing to light real life stories of individuals within the community from various different walks of life. So I think the first thing is you're actually giving people a varied view of what life can be like. So there will be many people that will identify with certain people that have been on this show. So it's great what you're doing. I think the title itself is explanatory, Against All Odds, because although a lot of people might envisage what success looks like, the real power in Against All Odds is around fulfilling your full potential, making sure that you define what success is for you. And against all odds, education, systemic, lack of funds, whatever you might consider an odd, still making it. And I think that's a powerful message today, where if even one person hears the message and decides to change the trajectory and start walking in a line that was created for them, Against All Odds is fulfilled its purpose.
Fantastic. That's really deep. We also have a tradition on this podcast of giving our guests the opportunity to dedicate this episode to anyone or any group of persons of their choice.
Yeah, no.
And you can look at the camera for that if you want.
No, I'm really passionate about. I'm passionate about a lot of things, but I'm passionate about black men in the workplace, in middle management that are trying to get to executive level. And I dedicate this episode to you. I understand the struggle. I understand the daily, what I call mines and bombs that you have to navigate around for them to not blow up, just to get through the day. But I'm here to encourage you to say that actually You can make it. Sometimes it might feel like you're carrying the whole weight of the race on your back in your role, because actually you're not just there as a black male. They see you as the black male that represents the black community, and I appreciate that. But I'm here to encourage you to say, stay strong and steadfast and remain tenacious and agile, because trust me, there are people, and I've spoken to them this year, who will sit in the higher echelons of the places you want to get to, and through sheer determination and understanding of their purpose and their destiny, they sit in those roles that you desire to. And so this is why I dedicate it to you.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Ade. Yeah. And I also like to say a very big thank you to our sponsors, Consulting Professionals Limited and Alexander Ash Consulting. Thank you very much for your continued support and for making this possible. And on this note, ladies and gentlemen, have a great week and see you next week. Thank you. Ade, we did it.
That's good.